Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Pat Shiraki. Attention now shifts to the economy following President Obama's signature on a debt deal. The White House released this photo last Tuesday. The president signed the legislation shortly after it passed the Senate. It allows the government to continue borrowing money and avoids an historic default.
It's an important first step to ensuring that as a nation we live within our means. Yet, it also allows us to keep making key investments in things like education and research that lead to new jobs.
The measure keeps the government funded into 2013. It requires any increase in the debt ceiling to be matched by spending cuts. Now, here's a look at how our local senators voted. Pennsylvania's Bob Casey was a yes. So were Delaware's two senators, Tom Carper and Chris Coons. Pennsylvania Republican Pat Toomey voted no. So did New Jersey's two senators, Bob Menendez and Frank Lautenberg. All the House members from the Philadelphia area voted for the measure. Among them, Congressman Pat Meehan, the Republican who represents Pennsylvania's 7th District, who also happens to be our guest today. It's great to have you with us, Congressman.
Great to be with you, Pat.
So why did you say yes?
I said yes because we needed to get something done. We needed to strike a resolution that accomplished what we needed to do in the short term and got us back to the most important issue, which is trying to create jobs and a sound economy.
I mean, there's a lot of people, though, across the country who were really struggling with what was happening in Washington. We were watching, yes, a deal, no, a deal, a lot of animosity between the two parties. What was your reaction when you were in the middle of all of that?
I'm as frustrated as they are. But the truth of the matter is, these are tough choices. And it's almost like a family that is sitting and talking about finances. For the first time, we're not discussing, who's going to get credit for spending a little bit more money. You're figuring out how you're going to cut spending. Mm-hmm. And as a result, there's a lot of interests at stake. And those are tough decisions, and people fight hard for what they believe in.
All right. So I guess the question, too, are you happy with this?
No, I'm not real happy, but I think it's the best that could be done under the circumstance. I really was advocating that we take a long-term approach and look at trying to address this further on down the road. And that would have included taking a look at closing these loopholes in a far more expansive approach to the entire tax code. That could have generated some new revenues and created a sort of a fairer system that I think would have been an opportunity. And I think we lost an opportunity because we would have had leadership from both sides sort of cutting against the adhesions. The president would have had to take some tough stances. Republicans would have had to take some tough stances, but I think both having to do that simultaneously could have gotten us farther. We didn't get there.
All right. So ultimately, though, there is now a committee equally split, Republicans and Democrats, to come up with how to make the cuts ultimately that have to take place over the next 10 years. So where do you want to see that go?
Well, they're going to have to make tough decisions with regard to a lot of our discretionary spending. And I think both sides are going to look at it while trying to protect against a real sort of tough decisions with regard to, Medicare and defense. So they're going to have to sort of dance around the real choices and get to hard decisions that give us a stable long-term projection.
Yeah, that really is the whole thing, though. The president, even on Friday now, has been talking about wanting to be able to create an environment where the economy is really on more stable footing long-term. Are you afraid that we're really not there or nowhere near there yet?
Yeah, we're not where we need to be. I don't think people have confidence at this point in time. And it has a lot to do with the debt. I mean, we are facing unique circumstances with this $14.2 trillion worth of debt that's growing. And just the interest payments alone on that are going to continue to influence our future if we don't do something to get it under control. And if you increase spending and you don't pay down the debt, you've got to raise taxes, and that affects jobs. Mm-hmm. And that's the essence of what we've got to try to do, is create a predictable environment and get some of this money that's on the sidelines, this $1.6 to $2 trillion that's sitting on the sidelines, and get it reinvesting in America again and getting us back to the cutting edge of competing on this global economy.
Well, how do you do that?
Well, the first place is you've got to create a sense of confidence that once they make choices, because business people are willing to take risk, they just want to be sure that the rules aren't going to change halfway through. And so much has come out of Washington in the last few years about not only the tremendous issues with respect to health care, but higher taxation and now the debt. And as a result, a business person looks and says, until I can figure out where this is going, I'm not going to make the significant long-term investment.
It's really interesting to note also this week there was a poll that was released from the New York Times and from CBS, and they really kind of got right into the heart of what was going on in the Congress. And the American people are not really happy. Says that the Congress has an 82% disapproval rating. Only 14% of Americans approve. Americans are about evenly split on the president's approval rating. Do you think the Congress and the president deserve this kind of hardcore and massive disapproval? Well,
people are angry. People are upset. And I can appreciate that. I mean, I felt the same way. And as I said at the outset, they just want you to get to yes. But there are also deeply held beliefs, and people are protecting strongly the issues that they care about. And so I think that there was too much in which people knew that in the end it was going to be the ticking clock that was going to compel them to come to the table, and it was who was holding the hot potato last, instead of making the long-term decisions. That's maybe one of the things that will be accomplished by this commission.
Are you even able to feel comfortable with making a comment about people within your party and the Tea Party in particular? Because there really is a lot of anger about their points of view too. Well, and some obstruction, some people have called kind of an obstructionist approach that they take.
Well, I respect that some of them feel strongly about certain things, but yeah, within the Congress, within our conference, I had some commentary. We meet behind closed doors, and the Wall Street Journal reported on some commentary that I had made about us needing to look at it as a nation, to look at it as America, and making a statement that we've got to come together. But at the same point, they look and they just say, look, we can't be doing business as usual. We were sent to sort of change what's going on, because the fact of the matter is what we've been doing is unsustainable. And every Congress before it just sort of keeps kicking the can down the road. And I have colleagues that have come to the place and they've said, this is the point in time where we begin to say we've got to address the long-term implications, because the failure to do it is going to put this on the back of our children.
Right. Okay, so long-term implications. But is it going to be long-term implications and we'll approve of it if my party gets its way? Because that really is kind of, I think, how a lot of people in the country see it, that they're not going to cooperate. What's your point of view on that?
Well, there was a strong belief in the need to make sure that we were sticking by a couple of principles, and where you began to see the effort bogged down and only was the request that they put the balanced budget amendment as part of it, and then give the people a chance to vote on the balanced budget amendment. And I think once that got worked through, we got to resolution.
Are you okay with that, though? Do you want the balanced budget amendment?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's it'll be very interesting. It won't be just Congress people talking, but if this gets through and it gets down to, then every American citizen that's a voter is going to have an opportunity to weigh in and determine whether or not we ought to do that, in which Washington's going to have to make the same decisions that families all around their tables are making every day.
Well, it's also interesting this week. I think there was a collective breath being held as we were watching the clock tick toward 4 o'clock with looking at the stock market. And it was down at noontime. It was down about 2:30, and then all of a sudden it was down a lot more than that, and then ended down 513 points. That is a big plummet. What's your take on that? And is the U.S. economy completely responsible?
Well, I'm watching that, and I think you're going to see a lot of prognosticators. But if you look at it, it has less to do, as I understand it, with the immediate actions that were taken in Congress, and more the long-term concerns about what's happening in Europe right now, which in some ways is a paradigm for what could happen here. And Europe has been swallowed by the obligations that they've had, that they've taken on with their spending, and the instability, all of the infusions that they've put in and now proving not to be working. They're very worried about the economies that are expanding beyond Greece to Italy and other countries, and we're beginning to see a real potential for that to be what those who see the big picture are worried about being repeated here in the United States.
You know, we were really thinking that maybe by this time, or perhaps by the fall as we move forward, we'd be climbing out of this recession in, a couple of rungs at a time. But with this happening and with what's going on in Europe, I think that there's a tremendous fear that we're going to go deeper into a recession, not pull out of it. What's your take on that?
Well, I feel good today that it looked like at least employment stayed even, or maybe just a little bit of a bump coming in, and we're not going to go charging out of this. If we make progress, it's going to be a very slow, but hopefully moving in the right direction. And I think that has a lot to do with, again, what we were doing. We're not going to make dramatic changes in the debt issue overnight either, but it's changing the direction and trying to get the debt moving downward and the economy moving upward in a simultaneous fashion. So we're asking big things to be done. And hoping that it gets done in a very short period of time. It's not realistic.
Yeah, Congressman, you haven't been in the Congress very long.
No, this is all new for me.
All new for you?
Yeah.
You still happy you got the job?
Yeah, I am. I feel like I'm going down there and getting a chance to fight for something that matters, which is the future for our children, and trying to make a difference for the people back here. I go in every day looking to see if there's things that I can do to keep people here working and employed and help the economy of the Delaware Valley. And then I look and try to make the kinds of decisions and calculations. I am really happy that I had a chance to go down and do this, but it is not an easy time because these are not easy decisions to make.
Do you see yourself doing this for a while?
Well, I'm going to continue to try to do what I can do, and I look at it. People are going to tell me in another 18 months whether I'm going to do it for a while.
God, I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how that.
You make the best choices you can and try to do the job well.
Thank you, Pat Meehan.
Thanks, Pat.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, nice to see you. Our guest on Newsmakers has been Pennsylvania Congressman Pat Meehan. Newsmakers returns next week at the same time, and you can watch us anytime at cbsphilly.com. I'm Pat Shiraki.